So we've talked a little bit about how people tend to, in the field, use percussion for improvisation, and often the percussion instruments are the instruments that are given to the clients, right? The shakers and drums and everything. And people have this mindset of like, well, let's give all my clients percussion so they can play along. But what about, and there's some reasons we do that.
Yeah.
But what about using the percussion instrument as the therapist's instrument? And you and I both do that. And we have some of our colleagues, Mike Marcinetti and Carolyn Keeble, use frame drums and other hand drums all the time as their primary instrument for accompaniment, for recreative experiences, improvisation, and compositional, and perhaps receptive methods. So how does a therapist get started? How does a music therapist without percussion training, they might be thinking that's a really daunting task. Like, I don't know how to play the drum. All I can do is play a basic beat. What's our advice to that person?
Oh, wow. That's a great question.
And why should they pursue
Why should
that?
they?
Yeah.
Right. Well, if we're not connected to the instrumentation, we have a great challenge ahead of us trying to connect with the client through that instrumentation,
Right.
whether or not we're playing it, which is perhaps one skill. But if they're playing and not able to truly progressively understand that instrumentation because we don't understand it, we've also set a limitation there.
Right.
So how does one get started? At one point I had to pick up a guitar,
Right.
and pick up a book to understand how to hold it and how to create the appropriate shape and how to take care of my hands in relation to creating all of these different new shapes, and then learning how to strum with the other hand, and then creating a sound.
Right.
And how does that sound? And does it sound like I want it to, or is there something I need to change? It's the same with every instrument in the end. It's a new technique. It's different. We have to be open and aware that we're at a new square one, and square ones are a beautiful thing.
Yep.
And
It's exciting.
Yeah. Because we're open to possibilities again, right? But just like with every single other instrument, and granted in our history, we've always thought about melody and harmony as these primary components, and maybe not so much about different pitch relationships in timbre, where really the power of percussion occurs, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's much more than rhythm, I can certainly say that.
Sure.
So going back and starting with basic technique, finding a good teacher, finding a good video, and starting at square one and enjoying it.
Yeah. Related to this, and I think that's such a valid point, you've got to be willing to pick up the instrument, spend time with it. I like to say you got to go on dates with your instrument. You have to get to know your instrument.
Yes, it's a relationship.
It's a relationship, yeah, and you can't expect too much at first. You're just getting to know this thing. So at first you might feel a little uncomfortable. You're not sure what to do. And the other thing that I think prevents people from picking up the instrument as adults and as professionals and as people who are accomplished is we don't like to sound bad. We don't like to sound like we don't know what we're doing. So I think I have two thoughts on that. One is that we have to work past that. We have to be vulnerable. We have to be willing to say it's okay to be a beginner. Yeah. And the second thing is that we have to be curious and motivated. And so, I asked the participants in our course, who's your favorite percussionist, or who's your favorite percussion group, or what's your favorite percussion music, and almost nobody could think of anyone.
Yeah.
And so there's the motivation factor of you've got to listen to the music. You've got to find out about the music, right? Because when I started playing drum set, I listened to drummers.
Yeah.
And I listened to bands, and I emulated.
Yeah.
And I got the sound in my ear.
Yeah.
And I wanted to play that music. It's like that quote, and I forgot who said it, but if you want to motivate somebody to build a ship, you don't just teach them how to build a ship. You instill in them a longing for the sea, right?
Yeah.
Do you know who said that?
Yeah, that's great. I have no idea who said that.
So we need to instill in people a longing for the music,
Yeah.
so they'll want to go to the music. So I recommend, to anybody who's watching this, to be motivated. It starts with falling in love with the music and becoming passionate about percussion, which means percussion music.
Yeah.
And the who's who, and find out the who's who's of world drumming, and there's so many.
Yeah.
And we can always, we can give people a whole list of resources to follow.
So, I'm going to dovetail off of something you said, that I'm getting to fall in love again with the music. I've spent the last 5 years writing, largely, and doing research, which has been important and another passion of mine. But because of that, I focused time on that, and I had to spend a little more time away from something that's been important to me.
Yeah.
And I wasn't close to any ensembles. I wasn't close to someone who shared that passion for quite a while. So I'm back somewhere. I'm back in Kansas, and they've got a West African drumming ensemble, and I'm able to pick that djembe back up and go back to some of those rhythms that I used to be strong in, and am still strong in, but have to kind of get the rust out.
Yeah.
And re-engage, and I just love it. I love being able to do that again, and it forms everything that I do in terms of teaching, in terms of research.
Yeah.
It's just good to go back to the music.
Go back to the music. Get into the music. Well, first find the music.
Yeah.
I think there's been a disconnection between the instruments. The instruments have arrived in music therapy. Djembes, bass drums, congas, bongos, frame drums, shakers. Yeah, we have plenty of instruments floating around. What hasn't really arrived yet is the music. And so how do we find that? Well, we're trying to bring it to people through music therapy drumming training, on the traditional side. I mean, we also do improvisation, we also do composition and accompaniment of familiar songs, but for percussion music, we're introducing people to the music. But anybody can go to iTunes or wherever you get your music, and you can just start to explore and find some music that you're excited about. And I think anybody who wants to play percussion, you've got to appreciate Brazilian music, West African music, Latin music, music from Arab nations. Listen to it, and then get an instrument and start to play along. Start to play along with music you enjoy. And I think that's a really great way to make sure that you pick that thing up and practice. Yeah. And thereby strengthening your connection to the instrument, strengthening your connection to the music, so you can reproduce the music for your clients, and thereby strengthening the whole therapeutic triangle. Yeah. You guys can find out more at musictherapydrumming.com.